Welcome back, Inebri-art. It's your faithful host, as always, Andy. And today I feel like we haven't had a musician in a long time. We went through a huge stretch where it's just like we need someone other than musicians. But today we're joined by Bayem. Welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And there's no way I can't compliment your choice of posters behind you. I don't know if that's your posters in the studios, but I'm a huge Fight Club fan.
Yeah, they're big. They're big in the office on they love David Fincher. So he's kind of like the
Oh yeah, yeah. All his movies are
uh,
fantastic.
definitely.
Um, and so, well, that I'll use that as a segue. And segues are always better when you announce that you're using it as a segue, a little
Of course.
inside scoop.
Uh,
But your some of your music's been featured in like media. Like you were, was it on a Hulu show? Not you, but your music was featured in a Hulu
yeah.
show and on the Kardashian show. Is that right?
Yeah,
That's cool.
definitely.
Like, how does that come about? Like, is I feel like that's a weird call to get.
Yeah, so like basically there are these companies called sync licensing companies whose whole job it is to just like connect artists with music like program directors like at all these shows because all these shows have like program directors whose whole job it is to get like independent music, and they prefer independent music or like smaller artist music just because if you want to get like I don't know, a Kendrick song or something big, it's going to cost you a check, and they normally don't have the
Right.
budget for that. So we put a song out called Joyride. It ended up on one of the Spotify like editorial playlists.
Hmm.
And then not too long after that, a company reached out and was like, "Hey, we'd love to work with you guys. You get paid when we get paid. Let's just start pitching the music." And within the first like I'd say probably like the first year, they got both of those placements. The first one was for a Hulu movie called Sex Appeal that actually came pretty quick. It was probably like 3 months in working with them where they're like, "Yo, we've got something on the table," and then probably 3 or 4 months after that, they're like, "Hey, it's super speculative right now, but they may want to use one of your songs in the Kardashians," and it was like, "Cool,
Yeah. That
yeah."
that's crazy. And it's funny because like I was watching the hell was I was watching something recently. I feel like there was a huge trend of that. My ex-wife used to watch Charmed.
Oh
And
yeah,
like there was always like the band of the week kind of thing that was just
yeah.
like pigeonholed into the episode. And there was something else I was watching recently that like at the end, like it came up and like this is who you've been listening to. And I'm like, I wonder if that's like a does that work? I mean, I know you're getting paid like by the
Yeah.
show, but like, I wonder if that like drives it, fans. Um,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
it's just
shoot, I can't speak for everybody, but I know for us, like the Kardashian one, that was wild. Waking up that next day after the episode premiered, it was like, wow. I like, if I remember correctly, our Shazams went up by like 30,000%.
wow, that's
Yeah,
awesome. Okay, so it definitely works.
yeah, it did. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's funny. This woman I was cool with at the time, she Snapchatted me at like 2 in the morning. I was still asleep, but I woke up that next morning and I looked at the Snapchat and she sent me like 5 or 6 messages. She's like, dude, she's like, bro, what the fuck? She's like, I had to put my blunt out because I thought it was too strong. Like, is that she's like, is that your song in the show? I was like, yeah, that is. And she's like, I'm glad. And she's like, I thought I was smoking
Yeah.
something different.
That can't be right. I know that guy.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah.
That that's always that's one of those super cool like moments. We don't get them kind of like in that way, but we get them where it's just like last year there's this like antique paddle boat that takes like sunset cruises through Plymouth Harbor out by like the lighthouse and stuff. And
Yo.
they booked us to run a comedy show.
Yeah.
And so like we're not comics, like we book the show. And so we're on the boat and the comics are doing their thing. And I turn, it's gorgeous out, a beautiful day. You're on this. I turn to my business partner, I'm like, we're at work right now. Like we're working,
Hell yeah. Hell
you
yeah.
know? And it's like it's just so much fun when you can be like, this is it's so stupid that people pay me to do what I do because it's just like it's not like I don't know. I don't find it that hard, but it's just like it's so cool sometimes to get these super cool stuff.
Yeah. It's wild when it's like your passions are like seen as being like valuable, you know what I mean? It's almost like, really this? Like
Yeah.
You like it that much? It was
I
like,
was
hell
gonna
yeah.
do this for free.
Exactly. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah.
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 That's awesome.
I remember early on, like a friend of mine, or friend at the time, like he was graduating from college and his mom contacted me like, yo, can you write a poem for his I was like, yeah, sure, yeah, I'll write it. So I wrote it, sent it to her, and she's like, all right, how much do I owe you? And I was like, I don't know, like I don't really want to charge. She's like, no, you should charge. And so I was like, I don't know, $75, I guess. I was just throwing a number out and then
Yeah.
boom, I'm like, $75. I feel like I don't know. But yeah, I hear you on that. It's strange.
Yeah.
It's strange, but it's really cool though at the same time, you know?
And the funniest part is like we like we'll put artists art in a location, and my youngest is now like a graphic designer and does artwork and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm always telling them like your work's too cheap. Like we hung an artist recently, and I'm like, now what would you like? What do you want for this piece? And this is what our commission is, yada yada yada. And they're like, oh, this amount. And I'm like, all right, we're gonna charge like almost three times that because that's
Yeah.
way like that's so cheap. And they're like, oh, I don't know. And like it's been up maybe a week, and we already have someone that's like, I would like to purchase this. I'm like,
Wow.
and
Oh
now
yeah.
it's now you have to be like, now you need to raise all your prices all the time because this is what your work commands. Um, yeah, and with my youngest, it's just like, they're turning 21 this year, so it's just kind of like, they do like stuff for their friends and friends of friends that they're like, oh, I got like 25 $20. I'm like, yeah, that's not, you know, not real money. Like, let's talk
Exactly.
1,000,
Oh yeah.
and so yeah, so it's fun to see them go through it. But I still, with my work, I'm like, why are you paying me for this?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I'd
so
imagine too for like what you do, it's like people look to you as like a tastemaker. You know what I mean? It's like we trust your taste, we trust your view, your network. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's kind of we start to get um it's like a lot of what we do is like we run events, and it's kind of like trying to run fun things. And so we just have like venues that come out of the woodwork, and they're like, we need to be busy on Wednesday night, what do you got, make us busy.
Oh yeah.
And so that's it's just fun, man,
Oh yeah.
but we're not talking about me, we're talking about you. You have a new EP out, tape 3,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
um is that the one with Joyride on?
No, Joyride was on a project from wow, 3 years ago now. Or almost 3 years.
Because I
20,
was just listening, it was just on my I had it playing on my YouTube here, and
yeah.
I always try to have like music before I have a musician on. I try to like put their music on for a little bit in the office, so I can kind of be like, all right, this is, and it's got like a very mellow vibe, like very, I can see like hanging out with friends and like in the background, and yeah, it was not conducive to work
Okay.
because
I
I
mean,
because I feel like this is more like I just want to like relax and chill. Like I think I need like something more upbeat, maybe not upbeat, but a little more frantic,
oh
to
yeah.
kind of stay focused on my work. But no, I was digging it. So did you? How is Tape 3 different than some of your other stuff?
It's really kind of like I feel like it's kind of an evolution, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? The project I released 2 years ago now called Oasis was very like concept driven. Afterglow, which had like Joyride on it, and then the song that ended up in the Kardashians, Pressure. It was, although it kind of fell together, it was also way more like concept driven. This tape three was it was planned, but it wasn't planned. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, we should like drop a project by the end of the year, and it was kind of like, what's the concept? I don't know, just kind of whatever. You know what I mean? It was just let's just put some songs together, package them, put them out, and yeah, in a way, that's kind of the concept. It's just the fact that there really is no like concept. You know what I mean? There's no like, okay, this is the aesthetic direction. It's just, yeah, this is kind of 2024 in a nutshell. That's the project. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes, and sometimes, there's certain albums that I think when you listen to, it's almost like you have to listen to that whole album. Like that is like one giant work. But then there's other ones where you're like, you jump around the tracks. So like, you want to listen to this one, I want to listen to that one. And so like, yeah, I think like a not necessarily having an overall theme or concept for it is not a bad thing.
Yeah, it felt, it felt, I wouldn't say freeing because I feel like creation is pretty free, but Yeah, it almost felt pretty laissez-faire, you know what I mean? I didn't really have to think too much about, well, does this fit into the concept? It was just, all right, well, we're just making songs. What are the best songs we got? Let's smack them together, put them out, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes that can be not even freeing, but make better work because you're gonna write the thing that you want to write, opposed to being like, well, like you're saying, like I need something that fits this concept. So you're kind of like stuck in this kind of framework where you're like, all right, so these are the kind of like this is the structure I have to work with, opposed to being like, I want to try this weird thing and let's try something else. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of freeing where it's just kind of do whatever.
Yeah, and I think, I think there's definitely I think in the creative field it's interesting, like finding a balance between the two is really important, at least to me, like I feel like some of the best work I've been able to do, not just like musically, but all the lessons I learned from creating that work were within like within a boundary, like within like, okay, these are the parameters. Like, okay, there was a time with like the previous two projects where it was all right, we have upbeat songs, we need something slower. And it's like, all right, well, I need to like mold my brain into slower song mode and like make demos that maybe don't make any sense right now, but then boom, something comes together and it's like, wow, I never would have gone out of my way to write a song like this, but because there was like an outline and there was boundaries I had to stay within, that came out, which almost like proved to me that, oh no, I didn't think I was capable of writing something like that, but it just happened.
Yeah.
So that's a whole different side that I could access whenever I want now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 There's an artist, he's done TED Talks. His name is Phil Henson,
Hmm.
and he talks about how like when he was going through school and kind of like a struggling artist, um he was always had just all this ideas and blah blah blah. And then he's like, I kind of got like my first real job, and like money wasn't really an issue, and I went out and bought like all the supplies that I had been wanting to have. He's like, and then I just kind of sat at my table being like, I don't it was almost like too many options.
Hmm.
And so then he set limitations, and I think he was like, all right, I'm going to create a piece and I can only spend like $3 on it or something. And
Yeah.
then so then like he started creating work that the limitation was that it wouldn't be permanent. Like he did a portrait of Amy Winehouse, but it was
Hmm.
in frozen wine.
Oh
So like
wow.
it would melt and would go away. He
Yeah,
did a portrait of Jimi Hendrix in matches and then set it on fire.
that's dope.
Um, yeah, so it was kind of like that. I think part of being creative is kind of, especially early on, like you're trying to figure out like what you can make your one instrument play, or you have your basic number two pencil and eraser and a sketchbook, and that's what you're stuck with. And trying to figure out what you can do with what you have, and I think that's like really kind of what drives the creative process.
Definitely. Yeah, fewer resources, leads to more creative solutions, definitely.
Yeah. Um, do you like when you're working on your music, do you prefer to kind of like work on your stuff alone and then kind of like bring it to your producer team, whatever? Or are you more like, let's sit and collaborate and work
I
collectively?
think Honestly, I think it depends. Like in general, up to this point, it's been a lot of just like sitting down alone and just like writing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I've like a small little group of people whose like taste I really trust, especially when it comes to like songwriting.
Hmm.
So there'll be times where we're all just kind of sitting, hanging out, and it's just like, well, shoot, let's make something. And I like to balance is kind of like at the center of like everything I do, not just in music, but in life. You know what I mean? That I feel like there's times where I feel compelled to be in the driver's seat creatively, and then there's other times where I'll just kind of put together a very like rough demo, very rough scratch idea, and just kind of bring
Hmm.
it to Owen, who produces pretty much everything that we put out or co-produces a lot of it, and I kind of just go, I'll bring it to him. He's like, "What are you thinking for this?" I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I just threw it together and just, thought it was cool.
Yeah.
So, and then there's other times just like, well, I'm thinking this, this, this. But I like to keep it very open, just not limiting in terms of, oh, it's got to be this way or this way. No, whatever makes sense, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. And just sometimes when someone will have you know, I've even found like when people will throw out ideas, like even their idea, it may not even be like the idea that you go with, but like you hear their idea and it sets your brain in a completely different area where you're like, oh no, what you're saying is wrong, but
Oh yeah,
what I just thought of,
exactly.
you know,
Exactly. Yeah.
and there to me, there's nothing. I think that is like one of the biggest rushes when it's almost like to me, it feels like a curtain's been pulled back in part of your brain, and you're like, oh shit, I didn't know this was here.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think
Yeah,
what's crazy about it is how like sometimes like working with other people, they'll point something out that felt so obvious that you're like, what? How did I not see it from that angle? You know what I mean? But then
yeah,
now I can only see it from that angle. It's like, nah, that's the angle. That's what we. And it always comes in the form of like, hey, this could be total trash. You don't have to use it. But what if you did this? And it's like, what? Wait a minute. That's genius. What are we talking about? Like that's genius. We need to run with
yeah,
that. Like
yeah.
fuck my idea. That's the thing now. We need to run with that.
Or just like that. Like, how am I that stupid that I didn't see that? That's so and
Exactly.
yeah, it's. I mean, it's not a creative venture, but I remember specifically when that happened. We were running a comedy show, and it was sold out,
Yeah,
and it was packed. There was no extra seats, and it was after COVID, but it was still close enough where people were a little squirrely about sitting with strangers.
for sure.
And so the last two people were here, and I'm like, oh, there's two seats right there. And they're like, well, we're not sitting with those people. And I'm like, well, those are the two seats that are open. I don't know what to. And then the owner of the venue just went over, and it was like two high top tables that were next to each other and just like pulled them apart. And I was just like, I mean, yeah, we could have just moved the table like a foot and a half. And I'm like, why did my brain not even register that that was an option?
Oh yeah.
It's so funny, like how something so blatantly obvious you can just not even notice.
Oh yeah. It is
Yeah.
wild. Yeah.
Where do you find the inspiration like for your songs? Like, where do they like the lyrics and stuff? Where do those?
I'd say a lot of it's life experience. I mean, I say that and then like, yeah, I feel like a lot of it's life experience. If I could pinpoint like a physical place that all the lyrics come from, I would probably just like mine that spot until there's no resources left.
Yeah.
It's weird. I kind of just like sit down and then it just like I start writing and then 30 minutes to an hour goes by and it's like, oh wow, there's a song there. You know what I mean? It's weird. I'm almost trying to like because for some reason the same thing I wouldn't say doesn't work the same way twice, but I've just noticed that the thing that works every time is just sitting down and writing and seeing what comes. Sometimes it starts with lyrics, sometimes it starts with a drum, sometimes it starts with keys. But yeah, I mean, when the songs are finished, I kind of realize that I like, oh, this is describing my current situation or a situation I just got out of or a situation I want to find myself in. It's almost like the subconscious is like finding its way out through the words, and it's not
Yeah.
even me saying it. You know what I mean?
Have you ever gotten kind of like done with a song and like looked at it and been like, oh shit, I'm a little more depressed than I thought, or
I feel
like.
like that's named every song. Every song.
Oh,
There's been like maybe not like just
I might not
depressed,
be okay.
but there's been times where like in the past, like when I was in relationships, I'm currently in a relationship, but in past relationships, where I'd write about like a situation being super toxic, and I would show it to my girlfriend at the time, and she'd be like, is that how you really feel? Like, is that how you feel about our situation?" I'm like, look, the song just wrote itself. This was not a purposeful thing. Like, it just happened that way. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I feel like yeah, there are times where I'll write something, and I'm like, let me take a walk around the block real quick. Let me just get
let
in
me
touch.
just think about that. All right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like, is
that's
this
funny.
really where I'm at? Type of thing. Yeah.
We just a little ways back we had a musician friend of mine, Sarah Martin, on, and she's been having a bit of a rough, or was having a bit of a rough year last year. She had gotten unengaged, and like
Oh wow.
I was not going to bring it up, but then
Yeah,
she like was like, this is what's going on in my life. I'm like, all right, let's talk about it.
exactly.
um but it was like the second time it had happened in her life,
Dang.
and she's now recording songs that she wrote the first time.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty amicable, so like still friends with her most recent ex. And he's like, yeah, you didn't write that song about me. And she's like, no, but I'm singing it about you.
Hell yeah. Hell
Like,
yeah.
damn, that's a little cold.
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
it's and that's one of the I think interesting things about art and music is it's you're really kind of putting very personal parts of yourself out. And do you ever write a song and you're just like, "Ah, I don't, I think that's a little too much inside that people don't need to hear about, or
In the past, definitely. But I'm very much in the headspace now that like if it feels like that, then that song has to come out because there's
oh
someone else who has experienced that or is experiencing that that'll hear those very like specific visceral words and be like, yeah, I feel that as well. I feel that
yeah,
too. And I think, I'm trying to I feel like now more than ever I'm at a point where I'm like there's kind of nothing off limits. If it's real, if it's like true to my own experience, then it goes. Whereas when I started writing music, like I was trying to write to get emotions out, but I also didn't want to have anyone ask questions about what I wrote. So I would like kind of like, neuter it a little bit, like keep it like tame enough where it was like, oh wow, that's powerful, but not like alarming. But
yeah,
now I'm kind of like, well, I mean, shoot, if it's real, it's real. That's kind of what matters most now.
yeah. I mean, it's a running theme of this show, man. I think one of the most poignant things you can do as any kind of artist is to be genuine to who you are. And like
Hmm.
the second you're starting to be like, well, I think if I do it this way, it'll sell better. And I think everyone has kind of had those moments where they're like, wait, I'm just doing this. I'm going to say this, and there's nothing wrong with it. Like, just doing something to get paid. There's nothing wrong with that. Like
Oh yeah,
musicians
no,
playing bars and they're like, oh, I got to play Wagon Wheel again. Hooray.
oh yeah,
Um, but it's when you're like really creating, I think it's important that you really put yourself out there, and you may not have to show it to everybody. It's always cool when that person does connect with it, but
mhm.
sometimes you do stuff for you.
Oh yeah. I think it's ratios too. I mean, there's times where like I think it is important to just make something light that may not be as deep, may not be as, oh well, I'm writing something poetic. It doesn't have to be. Sometimes you just want to put something out that's like fun. And
Yep.
then there's, I mean, like I said, I think it's just a balance. I think the balance is what's most important.
Yeah, I see that a lot with like visual art. Is you get these artists that have these long artist statements, and I'm like, I don't know, that just feels pretentious to me.
Oh
Can't I
yeah.
just draw something because I think it looks cool?
Oh yeah.
you know
Exactly.
so yeah, so that I think that's kind of, but I mean, I'm a kid that grew up on comic books and you know uh album covers and Iron Maiden album covers. So it's
Oh
like
yeah.
it doesn't have to be, Eddie's not telling a story. He's just this skinless crazy looking robot thing that's super cool.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so sometimes it is just, it's like the Expendables. Sometimes you have Fight Club that's super deep, but sometimes it's just explosions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, there's a place for both,
yeah,
place and
yeah,
time for both.
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, sometimes, yeah, you want to eat the real complex. Oh, this is a rice dumpling with a piece of grass over the top. But then other times it's like, man, let me get like three cheesy gordita crunches with crunch wrap between, extra fire sauce. There's a place for everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
it's not a either or, it's a both and.
yeah. It's McDonald's. McDonald's has been my curse. It's my COVID curse. Like their fries, I'm a big McDonald's fries are the greatest things.
Yeah.
And like pre-COVID, it'd be like, oh, like maybe once a month I'll get. And then COVID hit. And I'm like, I just need a hug from the inside. I'm gonna get
Oh yeah.
McDonald's, and it was like way too often. And it's too they're everywhere. They're goddamn convenient. And now I'm just like, I need to stop. It's
Dude,
too much.
I'm I went through a phase like right when I graduated high school where literally all I was doing was just like smoking weed with my friends, writing music. And at the time they had the 24-hour breakfast at McDonald's.
Yep.
Man, it'd be 2, 3 in the morning. I'm going through. Yeah, let me get three McGriddles, hash browns, some orange juice. I'm pretty sure they put crack in the orange juice, but I'm not mad at that. I mean, it's the best orange juice from a
Yeah.
fast food place I've ever had, man. It's Damn, that's good orange juice.
And like when you're like 19 and 20, you can like eat everything.
Yeah,
There was a couple years ago. So my son is 20, almost 23,
yeah.
and we were getting pizza, and he's like, "Oh, I want bacon and pepperoni," and I'm like, "Sounds pretty good."
Oh yeah.
So I was going like slice for slice with him, bacon and pepperoni. By the end, I'm literally curled in the fetal position, saying to my girlfriend, "I'm like, can you please drive him home?" I'm like, I don't think I can sit in the car.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it was, and I'm like, what am I doing? I am not 20. I can't do that.
Hey,
It
start
was,
getting the meat sweats, man.
oh, it was, I don't know. It was rough. It was not a good day,
Oh yeah.
but
Yeah, man. Shoot, that meat lover. That's yeah, yeah. That's
yeah,
that's that's a teenage game right there, man.
right, right, yeah. And don't eat half the pizza.
Exactly. Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And he's like, oh, you okay? I'm like, yeah, just go home. It's time for you to go home.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Game over.
Um, are you going to be touring to support the EP?
We're looking at shows right now, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? With the team I work with, I'm fortunate that, their whole outlook is just whatever makes sense, you know what I mean? It's never been okay, because this is what you're supposed to do, we're gonna do it. It's always like, well, I mean, does that make sense for where we're at the time? So, I have a show up in Chicago. I'm supporting an artist that actually opened up for me in December. I did a hometown show for like the EP release.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's the goal right now is to get out and do some shows where they make sense, more so in the summer, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of cram the schedule then, but yeah, yeah, looking to do
Do
some
you
shows
do
for it.
any of the, I feel like, now that I think about it, it's like people are probably starting to plan like their music festivals and like, do you do any of those? I feel like those are, I haven't been to one in a long time, but I feel like I should probably do one this summer because they're fantastic. The whole
Definitely.
day, it's,
It's a whole event. I mean, I'd love to do one. I'd love to do one, but yeah, like I said, if it makes sense, you know what I mean? You always hear about the big ones. I'd love to do uh one of the bigger festivals, at some point in my career, but yeah, for right now it's pretty wide open. Pretty wide
yeah.
open. Hmm.
Nice. Is there, is there like a city or venue where you're like, I mean, if it makes sense, but can we like go to like, is there like one spot that you kind of is on like your bucket list?
Man, I really so I'm uh I'm an Afro-German, so my dad's from here, from
Hmm.
Indianapolis, and then my mother's from Berlin, Germany. I'd love to do their Olympic Stadium in Berlin. I'd love to do that. Even if I was just like opening up to empty seats just to be able to be with other people. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the guy handing out chips in the back is like clapping in between chip sales. I'd love to do that. That'd be so cool.
Have you been to Germany?
Oh, many times. Many
Okay,
times.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
I was there. I think for 48 hours, maybe 36, and totally did not get the experience that I was hoping for. But
What was it?
it's
Like a
it
layover or
it was like so it was like this cruise
Mhm.
where like every day you were in a different location. So
Yeah.
it was cool because you can kind of crunch in a lot of countries in a small amount of time. But there were certain ones that just like the way they fell, um, you weren't there for very long, and like the port city that we were in Germany was like we went to Copenhagen and Estonia and St. Petersburg,
Oh yeah.
and then just this little podunk town in Germany. So it's like you could take like a 3 hour bus ride to go to Berlin, but it's just like it didn't like you didn't see anything historic. Um, so I'm like, oh, there's this thing where we can go and like tour a brewery. I'm like, that'll be the German experience.
Oh yeah.
Total letdown. It was like it was like a you see them all over here, like just these brew houses. It's just a restaurant that brews its own beer.
Oh yeah.
And like they open the door, there's no one there, and they're like, here's your warm beer, and you're like, yeah, this just it's I just feel like I didn't get the experience that, wasn't there long enough to like get to know any of the locals, wasn't in a cool enough place to see the tourist stuff, so it just kind of fell flat.
I hear that. I hear
Yeah.
that. I definitely think is I mean, I'm heavily biased, but I think it's a country everyone should try to go see, try to go
Yeah.
check out. Um, yeah, I haven't been back in a minute. I So I'm a citizen. I need to get my passport actually now I think about it. But I'm a citizen, and so whenever I go, I'm able to go for like an extended period of time, like if money and priorities allow. The last time I was there was 2018. I wanted to go during 2020, but pandemic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been too long. I need to get back.
Yeah. I mean, might want to take a 4 year vacation, come back.
Hey man.
Take me with you.
I'll just get a suitcase, man. You start doing some
um,
yoga.
so you're in Indianapolis, right?
Yeah,
Is there like a big music scene there? Like it's one of those I would you think of certain places around the country as like the music hubs, and like
yeah.
Indianapolis is never on that radar.
That's very fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely grown a lot. It's grown a lot. You know, it's so weird. Growing up, Indianapolis was like, I mean, still kind of country, but it because of like the pandemic and like rising prices on like certain coastal cities, a lot of people have like moved inland,
Yeah.
and Indianapolis just happens to be one of those places. Like Indy blew up over the pandemic because I remember before the pandemic, I mean, you had people from all over the place that like lived here, but now it feels like every other car I'm behind is like California license plate, Pennsylvania license plate, Georgia license plate. So with that, there's been a lot more like artistic opportunity, which has been really
Hmm.
cool. So there's now this like almost mixture of like out of like transplants and then like homegrown people who are kind of like working together. Um, yeah, the scene is like it's growing for this type of music that I do. I'd say there's probably like me and maybe like two other people. It's a pretty heavy like rap and like rock city. There's not a
Yeah.
lot of like pop music here,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
It's funny. I've interviewed a lot of pop musicians, and I'm like, it's weird. Like I've never been to uh a bar or whatever, and there's a pop singer on. It's always like a rock singer or a jam band, or it's I feel like it's got to be harder to be like, oh, I make pop music, and it just like it almost seems like we've all are exposed to kind of like movies and TV, and they're like, oh, if you're a rock band, you start and you grind it out in these dive bars, and then you move your way up, and then if you're a pop singer, you have to be discovered, and then you get on all the radio stations.
yeah, it's weird because like I've been in when I was about to graduate high school, I got a job at a local studio here who was kind
Yeah.
of like the like one of the like underground rap kind of studios, so I got to know a lot of people and that was really cool. So I get to, go to a lot of events locally in Indy and like and see a lot of people that I know. It's just weird because with the style of music I make, it's like, yeah, I can go to all these things, but like the value of like say I was an up and coming rapper, going to these events would make so much more sense because all the
Right.
people there are like conducive to what you're trying to do. As a pop artist, I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm here chilling, like I mean, maybe my street cred number is going up. I can like show my ID, be like, yeah, street cred was 2,000 yesterday, now it's 2,500. But yeah, in terms of like career growth, it's there's not a whole lot of spaces for me here. So we've done a decent amount of traveling to kind of like level that out, which has helped. Definitely
Yeah.
helped. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. It's just it's such a I feel like just such a different process to like how that music kind of gets heard, and it's so different now because like I mean, I'm sure if someone's like, hey, I'm gonna play your music on the radio, you'd be like, that's cool, but like, is
Mhm.
that even like something where you're like, oh, we need to get on the radio? Because I'm like, I couldn't tell you the last time I listened to radio.
Yeah, I'm not even really sure. I know there's like still the big stations who like play the Benson Boones and the Sabrina Carpenters and Chappell
Yeah.
Roans. Yeah, it almost feels like and I could be totally wrong about this, but it feels like Spotify like the big playlist that's like the new radio, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, getting them to shout you out opposed to just getting on a yeah. It's
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's I'm so old, and it's such a weird, like we. we have a company TikTok, and my kid's like, "Your TikTok's garbage." I'm like, "I know, I just don't know what to do with it. It's you do it."
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
dude.
Do
I
you
mean,
do you do you do the TikTok stuff? And no.
nah, it's weird. I mean, shoot, I'm Gen Z myself. I'm 26, like so like very beginning of Gen Z, but like I get TikTok. I get a lot of the memes and everything. Like I love memes. Maybe that's just a time period thing, but I love memes. Like
Yeah.
I used to have like a whole meme page, you know what I mean? But yeah, I understand why people do it. I understand kind of how it works, but in terms of like me getting on there and doing it, I was like, I don't know if it's conducive to who I am as a person, you know what I
It,
mean?
it just feels like it's a whole it feels like it's a part-time job amount of work that I don't want to do, you
Yeah.
know? Because
Yeah.
like you got to shoot the video, then you got to edit it,
Hmm.
and you can't just be like, "Hey, come check out our event here. Come check out our event here." Like you have to suddenly be entertaining, and you're
Exactly.
like, "Oh, do I want to do that? I don't have the energy to do that today."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
like,
I respect people that do it, and I watch it regularly. It's fun to watch, but I don't
yeah.
know, man.
I almost feel like you have to like put on a character. It's like, hey guys, what's going on? My name's Bayem. It's interesting because some
Yeah.
of those guys will like post the same video like 100 times, and it's not till like the 90th time that it like really starts to take off. And I'm like, man,
Yeah.
that's a whole grind in itself for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so and some of the stuff that is on there is so goddamn simple. And like the new one that I saw in there, it's a guy and his show's called Baked Baking,
Okay.
and he gets stoned and he bakes in his kitchen, and he just like his camera's just set up, and like he edits it a little bit, but he's just high as fuck making the biggest whoopie pie he can possibly make, you know. it's
Yeah.
and it's fun, and I'm like, this guy's crushing it. And yeah, but I just don't have the vision of how we are entertaining on that platform, so I'm like, I don't have time for it.
Dude, there's certain things that are on like TikTok that I'm like, man, I feel like Adult Swim coming out on TikTok would do so well. You know what I mean? Like, because
Oh yeah,
there's
because
like
all that
baked
short
baking.
format.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
baked
yeah, yeah.
baking. I'm like, that sounds like an old Adult Swim show you would see that lasts like 10, 15 minutes at like 2 in the morning. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Back in the day. But yeah, so yeah, maybe some of those guys were ahead of their time. Steve Brule, that whole thing. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I got to did you ever watch the Venture Brothers?
Yeah.
So I got to interview Doc Hammer.
Really?
Yeah, he's been on the show, and that was one of the most bizarre ways of getting another person for the show, because like a lot of times there's cold emails or PR people reach out, and it was in like lockdown COVID, no one was going anywhere, and I followed him on Facebook. And if you're on Facebook and someone's on, like there's a little icon and then there's like a little green dot that tells you that they're on right now.
Yeah.
And I happen to look over and like his icon had a green dot, and I'm like, I mean, I have nothing else to do, so I just Facebook messaged him out of the cold blue, and I'm like, hey, do you want to come on our podcast? And he's like, okay. And we talked for like 2 hours, to the point where I'm like, I want to keep talking to you, but my editor is going to kill me.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You just threw it out there and it
That's
connected.
just what
That's
you got to
awesome.
do, man. Like everyone's like, how do you get these people? I'm like, I ask,
Yeah.
and some say yes, some you never hear from. Some, I think one of my favorites, like we are on a press release email for Tool. So we get like, they're on tour, they have a new album, blah blah. Every time I get one, I'm like, are they available for an interview? I know the answer is no. I'm not an idiot.
Exactly.
But there must have been a new person at work that day, and they're like, I don't know, let me find out. And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the answer was no. But for like 30 seconds that day, Maynard probably knew who Inebri-art was.
Yeah. I feel like
So
so much of like any of this stuff is just like just numbers. Like you just need one yes. You just need one yeah. You just need
yeah.
one yeah. Then it just you know what I mean? It's wild. Yeah.
What was the one thing that you kind of threw out in that kind of like, wow, I'll see if this happens, and that kind of surprised you that the person's like, yeah, sure, let's do it.
Dude, honestly, like just getting signed to this label, the buddy of mine that I was working with at the time, it was like him and his partner. Both of them like, creative direction, graphic design, and they were doing all like the branding for my projects and everything when I was like 100% independent. This was probably back like 2019. I finished a project, and beginning of 2020 rolls around, and that buddy of mine is like, "Hey, I have some friends of mine who have been working in like they have like a creative agency. They've been doing a bunch of stuff for a long time. They want to get into being a label." He's like, "Would you be cool with me sending them your project?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." I mean, yeah, like I mean, the worst they can say is no, you know what I mean?
Right.
But if
Yep.
anything, I mean, in my mind, I was like, shoot, I could get some really solid feedback from them, from people who work in the industry, and see what happens from there. And literally, he texted me probably like 2, 3 days later and was like, "Oh yeah, they want to set up a meeting." So he set it up. I pulled up, and then the second time I met with them, they were basically like, "Yeah, we want to put the paperwork together to sign you." So it was like, I'm like, well, cool. You shoot a shot. Sometimes it misses, sometimes it goes in, but you know that kind of helped me understand like if you never ask, the answer is always no.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's so right before COVID, I was working in marketing.
Yeah,
And before that, I had a shitty retail job that I hated. And I was like at that point where I'm like, I need to get out of here.
yeah,
And I had a friend that was working for the company that I ended up working for who's like, oh, they're hiring sales. And I'm like, I don't want to do sales, but I was just kind of like, I haven't interviewed in forever. I'm like, let me just put in for this, see what happens. I already know the job is not enough money for me to leave what I'm doing. Let me just see what happens. Kind of be good practice, whatever.
yeah,
So I go for an interview and thank them, whatever. And then about 2 days later, they call me and they're like, "Hey, we want you to come in for another interview for a different position."
yeah.
And so like they literally this position didn't exist before I interviewed, and they literally like your marketing skills on social media and your experience doing trade shows and da 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 da. So we just created this position. We would like to put you into it. And I was like, oh shit, okay. And like that was it. I went on, you know, I didn't interview anywhere else because they just built the job around me, and I was like, perfect. This is, so you just never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah. I think it's a I have two younger siblings. One is he just turned 21 last year. The other one, she's 23, and that's something that we talk about all the time. And like they're in like content creation, and my sister's like, who's the middle one, she's like, "Oh well, like I don't know if I want to try this." I was like, "Fuck it, shoot your shot." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I feel like a healthy amount of like fuck it decisions turns out pretty good because you learn something. You push past your comfort zone, and now you're like, wow, maybe I am comfortable doing this. I didn't think I was, but hey, now we're here.
Yeah. And even when they don't work out, you're like, oh, well, I now know how to do this thing that, was part of that thing that didn't work well. And, I have this experience. And, we got talked into trying to run a farmer's market 2 years
Wow.
ago. And so I text my business partner. I'm like, so yeah, so I just got off the phone with the army, and he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "We had to get the approval of the army to run this farmers market because of its proximity to the Cape Cod Canal,
Okay.
which is handled by the U.S. Corps of Army Engineers
Oh
or
wow.
the Army Corps of Engineers. So we had to get their approval to use the parking lot, and I was just like, "This is insane!" Like, so, but you're like, "Okay, I can check that box off that I, had to do that before." So
Exactly.
it's just, yeah, it's always that kind of having had those jobs where you punch in, punch out, go home, make dinner, watch Big Bang Theory, rinse, repeat.
Big
I,
bang.
I don't know if I could go back. My job is so weird that I'm like, if it's not all over the road, I don't think I could go back.
I hear that. I
Yeah.
mean, shoot. I feel like doing something that's like kind of that's doing anything where you kind of have to like make your own path. It's like the skill set that you develop is just so all over the place that it's almost like, oh yeah, well, I do know how to do that. Like I
Yeah.
don't because you had to do it one time for one person like 5 years ago, and then it's like, oh wow, yeah, I remember how to do this.
And I think it makes you way less worried about committing to things that you don't know how to do.
Hmm.
And my favorite thing, so my business partner, editor, his name's Fish. And so he'll be like, so we have to do, whatever. And I'll be like, yeah, but that's future Fish and Andy's problem. Like,
Exactly.
let them sort it out.
Oh yeah.
And then the day of, I'm always like, Past Fish and Andy are assholes.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh yeah. Especially
Like,
when you like break it open. Like I feel like the craziest moments are when you're like, oh man, that's gonna take 5 minutes, and then you break it open, and you're like, oh, this is gonna be like a week and a half process, but I have to get
yeah,
this done tonight. And it's just
yeah, yeah. You're like, oh, what was I thinking?
yeah.
Yeah. So cool. Where can people go to find the album? See, I mean, obviously Spotify, but I mean, is it on Bandcamp? Are you going to do vinyl? Like,
Shoot, honestly, right now it's just on streaming, Apple Music, SoundCloud, Spotify, possibly Napster. I don't know.
Napster.
When you upload like music or podcast, they have all
Yeah.
those things you can click off, and you just say click all, so it could be everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just my name, Bayem. Same on socials. It's IAMBAYEM. So I am Bayem.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can kind of just look it up and it pops up. We have the SEO put together pretty nice. So
Yeah. That's one of those funny. I've talked to a lot of musicians now, and the one that jumps to mind is this band called Red Gold Green,
Mm-mm.
and the band is just Red Gold Green, but they dropped all of the vowels, so it's
Yeah.
just consonants. And I'm
Okay.
like, why did you do that? He goes, it's search engine optimization. And I'm like, ugh. I mean, I get it, but I kind of hate that.
Oh yeah.
you know?
Hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but cool, man. This was an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Dude, thanks
Um,
for having
if you ever have another album, not if you ever, when your next album's coming out,
me.
like jinx you, Jesus. Um, feel free, reach out, come back on. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, this was a great time. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, no worries. And listeners, you can find me back here again every Monday. I don't have another recording lined up, so I couldn't even begin to tell you who's going to be next, but someone will be next. And, you know, hopefully, I'm sure they'll be fun. But we'll catch you guys again next Monday, as always, and we'll see you then. And thanks for checking out the show today, listeners. If you enjoyed the content today, you can go over to patreon.com/Inebri-art to support the show. You can join over there for just a few dollars a month and help us provide this fun content that you just checked out. You can also email us at Inebri-art.com with your questions, complaints, and concerns, or you can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or at Inebri-art6 on Instagram. And also don't forget to check out our other shows, Bar Talk Podcast, Old Colony Cast, Inebri-art, and all the other shows on the Inebri-art Network, which you can find at Inebri-art.com. Thanks again for listening.